Hello, today is May 24th, 2020, and this is the first official update for our GoFundMe charity fundraiser. And the purpose of the fundraiser, again, is to raise $8,000. Has two reasons for the funds we're trying to raise. The first is to translate our program, which is called Networking for Life, the educational process, into Spanish. And then the second part of this fundraiser is to build our website that we will use to ensure we could connect with all the students and parents and businesses, across Texas. And we want to first start in Texas, primarily is because that's where we live. That's where most of my family, friends, and their families and friends and extended friends and relatives will live. So once we get our program implemented and debugged, then we can start sharing our best practices with other states as far as finding the right type of people to join our organization, because with Networking for Life, not just anyone could participate and meet our objectives, because for various reasons. But again, this is our first fundraiser update, and one of our quotes for the organization that we will be sharing as we go forward is, never underestimate the power of society. And again, never underestimate the power of society. That's going to be our tagline as we go forward. And then we're actually in the process of getting our name with trademark protection, which is Networking for Life. And then once we have that trademark protection verified, then we will be, of course, just selling various items with our logo on it to help build funds to fund our youth educational services as we go forward. And again, we are a grassroots organization, and as we get started, primarily we will be recruiting students to come into our program, and we will develop them to be the leaders to where they will be running the organization. And now I found a letter that I put together back in September of 2017. Is when I first actually tried to launch this program into our target community. And I will see if I could show the target community. And if you could clearly see it, this is the target community. Again, it's where I tried to start the program back in, it's a coincidence, really. It was this same weekend back in 2017, the same Memorial Day weekend. So I guess I got sidetracked due to a vehicle accident that took place. Seemed like it was yesterday, but it was actually, October the 22nd, 2016. And that's how I got derailed. And after that accident, it's kind of, going through just trying to survive, recuperating. Was glad that, I managed to live through that accident. I was sitting at a red light and just got rear-ended by a vehicle. But they say, I survived. Took a while to get back on track, but I did have all this information printed and saved on my computer. So again, because of the global pandemic that's taking place now, it created an opportunity for me to have time to really get back to what I really have a passion to do, which is networking for life in the best interest of students staying in school longer until they graduate, whether they understand it or not. It's just that it's just something that could really come in handy and allow you to do things that you just never think about. As with myself, with what I've been doing and learning to do after high school, it's just been hard to explain. But again, I always try to tell anyone that I only know what I know because people helped me. I didn't invent anything. I didn't come up with anything great. It's just that over time you just learn from people that decide that they just want to help you, and they only have a reason. They just want to help you. So I just had just a whole list of people, and maybe in my next update I could have a list of those people that I could remember, because it's been 40 years of information that I'm trying to pull together and have it organized to where just like any other educational organization, you have your procedures documented, and then those that that have the interest to participate in growing something that's going to be around for centuries, then they will be welcome and supported. But now, as I was saying, I have this letter that I wrote, was introducing myself to the neighborhood. And again, I'll show this neighborhood again. It's called Target Community. I don't know if that's good enough, but Target Community 2016 to 2017. And that is the neighborhood where I grew up. So that's the connection as far as my reason for wanting to start there. And there's one story while I'm thinking about it. Yes, my oldest sister, Leona, we talk a lot, and I don't know when this was, but it could have been 3, 4, 5 years or longer. But we just happened to be talking about kids in the neighborhood growing up, going to college, and then they come back to the city where they grew up in to work. And as she pointed out to me, she said, "Well, you didn't do it." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" She said, "Well, you went away to Dallas to go to school, and you're still there." And I said, "Huh, that's interesting." And I said, "Well, it wasn't planned. Things in life just happen, and you go from one step to the next step, and before you know it, 10 years went by. You have roadblocks, and another 10 years go by, and then things happen, like you change jobs and accidents, and just things that just happen, and then you go into a mental mode of trying to survive. And while you're doing that, time just keeps on going." But I thought it was interesting, but I was trying to tell also, I remember talking with my younger brother who passed last year. Actually, he passed last year, like 30 days after my mom passed. And then people always think they know what they will do when something happens. And they always make it sound like, well, if that happened to me, I'll do this and I'll do that. and they have all these great plans while they are, mentally stable and not going through, any unpredictable things that change your emotional state. So, even though, my mom, was ill, I knew she was going to pass away, and you try to be prepared because one day she's going to pass. And again, with all my great planning and all the things and the understanding of some things in life, because there's a lot that we as people will never understand unless you make a commitment to research and put in the 10 to 15 years to actually learn, the facts and not so much as what other people say. But again, when my mom passed, I thought I could do certain things, and I couldn't. It's just that my mental stability was no longer there. And sure enough, I survived by staying busy, trying to work, trying to, do things with my family, and just all the things that you have to do because, life goes on. Again, then 30 days later, then my younger brother passed. But what I was going to say about Philip was, he used to always tell me when I would come home to visit, he would say, "Why are you always trying to do things here in the neighborhood?" And I would say, "Well, it's because it's what I like to do." And it's kind of like, I missed a lot of the conversations we would have because he was just speaking from facts, and he would tell me things that I didn't know because I wasn't, living in the neighborhood. He said, one thing that I always try to remember is, he said, "Hey, there's been people that's been trying to do things in the neighborhood for years. What make you think you could do it and they couldn't?" And I would just listen and, again, gathering information, because I'm the first to say I don't know everything. And again, I only know what I know is because people tell me, and I listen to information when it's related to what I'm trying to do, and I just pick, select information and you use it accordingly, as long as it's tied to, my interest, what I'm trying to do with my time, because I don't like anybody telling me what to do, because I don't tell anyone else what to do, except for my 3 kids. And that's it. Anybody else in the world that I run across is, they're just, friends I know, family members. We're connected, great relationships, but I never tell anyone, you should do this and you should do that. I don't do it because it's that person's life. And I learn, again, from listening to people, instructors, co-workers, friends that I meet. And again, in our country, freedom is supposed to be free will, and free will is not you doing something because your manager is telling you to do it, or somebody's telling you to do it because it's a benefit to that person. That's just a form of manipulation. And again, it just goes back to people as a whole just understanding better information. And then I always like to say, it's great to trust people, and it's even better to verify the information before you decide to use it. So it's just, again, information, collective information from society, of everybody you meet or you listen to, be in person, on telephones, YouTube videos like the one I'm making, the news, movies, music, billboards, flyers, information you read in books, just information in general is how people develop their personal reasons for doing what they do. So again, it's funny because I never used to talk to anybody up until I became a owner of a child care center back in 1992, and going to those classes, the instructors would say everybody is not meant to be working with children. So that's why I started learning things, because I had like a new, just a new understanding based on listening to information that I never heard before. So that's why I said with our organization, you have a lot of people that would say, oh, I like working with students, I like working with kids. And then in reality, they don't really know if they like it because they hadn't done it before. And that's okay, because up until you do something, that's when you find out if you like it or not from what you think. So with that, before I read the letter that I sent to the families in the neighborhood, and I did get in trouble because I wasn't aware that I could just put information in anyone's mailbox, because technically it's illegal. So the flyer that I'm going to read, I put it in the mailboxes of all the homes in our target community, and I got a couple of telephone calls from the post office because they were getting ready to fine me because of me getting the information out. So then I learned there, like, wow, it's more to everything than you expect when you're doing something that you never done before. So it was a learning, situation, and then I had to stop and try to figure out, well, how am I going to get the word out to the families, because no one knows me. A lot of the families, they were not living in the community when I moved away in 1979. So no one really knew me. So, and that's okay, because, home is home, and you're doing what you like to do, and it's just have to figure out how to get the word out. And thank goodness, I'm learning to use technology, the videos, building the website, and then I go forward. I actually just got stung by a wasp. I was trying to figure out why my arm was burning, but that's another unexpected thing. But what I want to talk briefly is about this document I printed out on the internet on September the 17th, 2017. And what it is I was trying to figure out some information that I had heard before about how you could show progress in whatever you're doing. And then I was always trying to figure out, well, what exactly am I trying to do that could generate interest in people with discretionary funding that could help with building the project. So I thought about what you hear on television, and when they're talking about the first, second, third world countries. So I learned to ask questions. So I started asking myself is who, developed that scale to decide what's a first world country, what's a second world country, and what's a third world country. And my research led me to finding out that this was something that came about when President George Bush II was our president, and that's when this phrase, these terms started being spread across the across the country and across the globe globally. But what I read again find out, well, what's a first world country, what's a second world country, and what's a third world country. It's all depending on resources. For example, just in-house running water, electricity, city items, like city hall, stores, banks, gas stations, libraries, just amenities, just extra stuff. If you have extra stuff, and you get to, excuse me, you get to determine the scale, then again, if you're in charge, then you get to decide everything. So with that in mind, and I started shifting my focus to say, well, the reality of what I'm trying to do, which will have the greatest impact in the best interest of my target market audience is students, because it's what I like to do. Because if you have the right information, better information, better decisions, better opportunity to essentially do what you want to do and to be able to generate the funds to cover it. Once I got into business in '92, I'll admit I did not take any business classes. I didn't do all the things they say you should do as far as preparing. But I learned a lot, again, and it's all because someone's always watching you. And whether you notice it or not, somebody's watching what you do. And then after a while, they just come up and give you information. And that's how I became a tutor at the school. And I think I might have mentioned in my profile and in the GoFundMe campaign that it was a student, a third grader, Willie, and I won't say his last name, but I have his last name, and my plan is to try to locate him, because he was the one that told me that teachers go to school to learn how to teach students, and then they come back to school and they don't know how to teach. So I asked him, well, what are you talking about? And he was a third grader, and he said, well, when I'm in class, I'll raise my hand and answer a question, and then all my teachers, they'll say, oh, Willie, put your hand down, you don't know the answer. And then he said, after a while, he just stopped raising his hand. And then what that told me was all the things you hear in the media, the radio, television, everywhere that says, well, the kids, they're not doing well in school because of their parents, or they're not doing well in school because of where they live, or they're not going to school because of drugs, they're not going to school because they're in gangs. All the stuff that I heard, and again, I am just like anyone else. You just listen to people and you believe what you hear. And then I found out none of that was true. And then, excuse me, sorry about my scratchy throat, but I was told by my instructor, because when I was in college, I went to school to work on my MBA strictly to find out what made people decide to spend money on what they decided to do. And then I told my instructor that every time I talk about my program, teachers get upset with me, parents get upset with me, everybody's mad at me, and I couldn't figure out why. And then my instructor, when I told him about the situation, he said, well, just tell me a little about what you tell parents. And then what I did, I started my regular informational speech, and after about a minute or so, he stopped me and he said, oh, I know why everybody's getting upset. Excuse me. It's because they're getting defensive because of words that I use. So he highlighted some words that I was using, and excuse me, I'm gonna see if I can clear my throat. Hold on one second. I don't know how to use this video, so if I turn it off, I don't know if I could start it back. So I'm just gonna try to clear my throat for a second. Excuse me. Excuse me, but I'm back. I had to clear my throat and drink a little water. But the words I used to say, I cannot remember because I stopped using them, because he said I was using words that just made people defensive. So now, whenever I'm talking to anyone about our program, I don't mention anything about the school system, teachers, principals, parents. I don't mention anything because when you mention those things, if you're a parent, then you get defensive and start, just get upset. And I cannot explain why people get upset, because that's like, it's different for everyone. So with that, it's kind of, I don't remember the words because I just, once again, it was pointed out to me, I just didn't use the words anymore. So I always say, I'm just trying to enjoy my life, doing things that I enjoy doing just because it's what I like to do. And that is giving kids information and let them decide what they want to do as they get older. So with that in mind, the objective of, our fundraiser and our long-term objective is to develop neighborhoods by bringing resources into the neighborhood. For example, bringing a library, bringing a shelter, because in our target community, whenever it floods in Houston, it's just a horrendous event for people living in the neighborhood, because they get flooded, the water comes into their homes, and then it's that damage, and then people are getting ill and get off track, and no one has found out or decided. I won't say that. No one has decided that they wanted to help the community, because the map of our target community, I got that from City Hall in Houston, and the person that gave me the map, he was telling me he know our community, and he said, yeah, that's a tough community. You sure you want to try to do this? And he was telling me good luck and just a list of things. And then when I left that person, when I was driving back home, heading up to back to Dallas, I'm thinking, what's so bad about our neighborhood? So again, for whatever reason, I learned to ask questions, which will be the goal of all of the students we work with, is to say, no, you ask questions, you get your own information, find out for yourself, and not to listen to what other people say. They'll give you information to get you to do your own research. So with that, I said, now, thank goodness we have Mr. Google or Miss Google. You could Google information. And I found out that our neighborhood, quote, was classified by, our country during the time I grew up was like one of the worst places in the world to live due to drugs and police activity. But with the drugs that was coming into the neighborhood, it just causes all type of additional concerns, for the community. And then that was leading me to the next question was, well, where are these drugs coming from? Because nobody in the neighborhood was, developing the drugs and processing the drugs and then getting, kids addicted to the drugs. All that was coming, from outside. And I said, oh, it's interesting. But with that, I don't want to get off track because of this update is only to get information out to generate interest for, our program. And I'll get started on this letter. Thank you, sir. And I just got a package from, everybody knows the great Amazon. They do everything. So the letter, and then I'll be ending with this letter. And again, I'll just read the letter as I wrote it in the third person that I was dropping off to introduce myself to the community. And I'll just kind of show a copy of it because, again, it was, back in 2016. This is 2020, so some people might still have a copy of it, or they might remember seeing it in their mailbox, and then I never was able to follow up. So that's what I'm trying to avoid now. So with the best word is just with the opportunities that's now available with video recording. This video will be available and able to be shared with people, forever going forward. So now I will be able to stay in touch, and that's again part of the fundraisers. Once we collect the funds and build a website, then just a whole lot of other information and activities will be easily accessible. And that's why I try not to get too excited. It's like all these years, it's like from 1983 is when I first started to try to decide what I wanted to do with my life. And again, as I'm talking, I'm just going all the way back because I just hadn't had time to think about it. And the whole reason I even got into business was during the time when I was working with with GE Government Services, with the Department of Defense, it was a top secret project, CERTAS, which was way back in the Cold War. And what we were doing, we were out protecting the country. It was just like, just an unknown operation that we was just doing what we do, working hand in hand with the Navy, and I was just learning a whole lot of things. And I was actually, was the first time I had time to actually finish reading like an entire book, because in school we only read the information that was related to the class work and research. So there was no like extra reading, with the exception of reading, like the newspaper, the comic section. But again, so on the USNS Contender, which was my first ship, but it was a magazine that I read. It just happened to be on the ship, and they provided just educational information because we were totally isolated from the world. There was no mobile telephone, no internet, none of those things. So you just picked up new things, and that's why I started reading, and I got into understanding how to take care of your body. I found out that all the things that we were eating while growing up were actually no longer deemed healthy, because eventually it would create problems with your body. So with that, again, I read this magazine about why people went into business. So I was reading that, and then the reason they said people go into business is they try to solve a problem. Then they said, to think about the time when you were growing up, that you have any problems. And for months, I couldn't come up with any problems. And so I just said, it was kind of funny because I went like 2 or 3 weeks, trying to think of something that I didn't like when I was growing up. And I couldn't come up with anything. So then I started thinking, well, what created problems for me? And it was when I listened to people that I grew up with, because they were older than I was. So with that, I won't go into that because it's getting late. As you can see, it's starting to rain on this Memorial Day weekend. And in closing for this first update, that was our pet barking, Ziva. She's a professional barker. So it's either she's barking at me or barking at the rain, but my son, he took her back in the house. So getting to the letter, and again, this is a copy of the letter. I would just start and read it as written. It has my name on it and the address of 3214 Kaplan Street, Houston, Texas, 77026. My telephone number, 214-641-6241. And that address, 3214 Kaplan, that's where I grew up. Moved into the home when I was 5 years old. With the letter, it says, Mr. Gary moved into his home at 3214 Kaplan Street, Houston, Texas, 77026 when he was 5 years old. He still recalls how tall the grass was as his family drove to the front of the property. His parents were born and raised in the state of Louisiana. His mom was allowed to go to school until the 8th grade, while his father only made it to the 4th grade. His parents decided to move to the great state of Texas for work, and also to allow their children the opportunity to go to school at least up to the 12th grade, because in Texas, you had the opportunity to continue school up until that grade. After high school, Mr. Gary began to find out that people in leadership positions intentionally gave misleading information to the youth for personal gains. And this cycle caused children and new employees to develop habits that never produced consistent positive results as they grew older. Mr. Gary is a first-generation college graduate. He received a diploma in electronics with a minor in circuit analysis and a bachelor's degree in technical management from DeVry Institute. And then This was completed in 1981 and 1995. And then at that point, he attended LeTourneau Christian University to complete his Master's of Business Administration. After receiving his diploma of electronics, Mr. Gary landed a position with Hydroscience, a scientific firm that built the first underwater radar surveillance system called CERTAS. This new technical position led Mr. Gary to becoming a ship mission supervisor, where he met great new friends from all across the United States, as well as from other countries like Japan, Scotland, and Italy. Mr. Gary elected to get married on the same day his parents got married, February the 18th. And they have 3 children. Mr. Gary credits his parents for allowing him to be able to withstand the normal hardships presented during a normal life. Words of wisdom from his mother included: always try to go to church every week, and do not let anyone trick you into drinking alcohol or using drugs. Words of wisdom from his father included: always get to work early and do what you are being paid to do. 2, take turns driving. Don't let your co-workers do everything all the time. Pitch in and help. Mr. Gary learned that there's nothing wrong with working hard and learning new things. For decades, Mr. Gary wanted to create a business that took great pride in providing accurate and verifiable information to children, which would allow kids to follow their own dreams after high school while earning a good salary to take care of themselves and their family, as well as their community. During his state of Texas training in 1992 to become a state-certified director for a child care development facility, Mr. Gary learned how some 400 years of uncivilized business practices caused society to turn its back on certain people and children in need of educational support. Mr. Gary believes that new business practices can be utilized to ensure that all students decide to stay in school longer compared to deciding to drop out of school before graduation. In October 2016, Mr. Gary learned firsthand that his great nieces were in need of student achievement awareness support that would stop them from being removed from their school and to be better prepared for life after high school. By Texas law, all children must attend school until they graduate by using a new way of providing student support services. Mr. Gary reports that it is a great privilege and honor in ensuring that his extended family members and their friends all graduate from high school and land good, stable jobs. Mr. Gary's can-do attitude is built upon an extraordinary combined foundation created from best practices experiences from working in the following 3 industries: technical electronics, child care and youth development, and health care services. That's the conclusion of this first update. And again, keep in mind, never underestimate the power of society. Thank you for your support.